For months, silence filled the air. Rumors grew louder, accusations spread across social media, and the faith community waited for one voice, one statement from the man at the center of it all. And today, for the first time, Bishop Herman Murray has finally broken his silence, but the truth he reveals is nothing like what anyone expected, and some people aren't ready for what he's about to confess. For years, Bishop Herman Murray has been a towering figure in the holiness and Pentecostal world, a man known for fiery preaching, bold convictions, and a legacy carried forward from one of the most legendary leaders in modern church history. To his supporters, he represents strength, order, and unwavering discipline. To his critics, he represents something else entirely: rigidity, fear-driven leadership, and a lack of transparency that has only fueled more questions over time. But in the last few months, everything changed. Whispers became headlines, allegations became debates, and the internet did what the internet does. It took every silence, every pause, every unanswered question, and turned it into a storm that even Herman Murray himself could no longer ignore. Now, after weeks of tension and speculation, the bishop has stepped forward to address the controversies head-on. What he reveals is shocking, not because it's loud, but because it's honest in a way many people never expected from him. This isn't a polished statement, a PR scripted speech, or a carefully crafted apology. It's raw, it's unsettling, and for the first time, it's real. But before we get to his confession, we have to rewind way back to understand how Herman Murray rose, how he fell, and how the pressure that built around him eventually pushed him into this moment. Bishop Herman Murray didn't appear overnight. His journey to prominence in the church world was built on decades of dedication, a deep connection to the faith of his family, and a relentless drive to follow the path carved out by his father, a legendary pastor who left an indelible mark on the Pentecostal movement. From the very beginning, Murray's life seemed destined for leadership. He was a preacher's kid, raised in the echo of sermons, the rhythm of choirs, and the discipline of church life. But what set Herman apart wasn't just his background. It was his charisma, his presence on the pulpit, and the way he could command attention with a simple glance or a single phrase. People didn't just listen to him, they followed him. Every word he spoke carried weight. Every decision he made felt monumental, not just for his congregation, but for the broader faith community watching closely. Early in his ministry, Murray faced challenges that could have broken anyone else. Small congregations, financial struggles, and skeptics questioning his readiness for leadership were constant companions. But he persisted. He learned quickly how to navigate criticism, how to project authority without alienating his flock, and how to turn every setback into a lesson, a story he could later share from the pulpit to inspire others. By his late 20s, he had begun to take on leadership roles that most would only dream of. Programs expanded under his guidance. Attendance grew. He became a recognizable figure not just in his city, but nationally, invited to speak at conferences, mentor young pastors, and appear on television broadcasts that reached millions. Yet with every step upward, the pressure mounted. Being the son of a legendary pastor meant living in a shadow that was impossible to escape. Every decision he made was scrutinized. Every misstep, no matter how minor, was magnified. And though his rise seemed unstoppable from the outside, those close to him knew that the weight of expectation, tradition, and public scrutiny was already building, a pressure cooker that would eventually reach a breaking point. What happened next? The series of events that brought Bishop Murray into the eye of controversy began subtly, almost imperceptibly, but would later explode into a storm that no sermon or public address could easily calm. No rise in leadership is without challenges, but for Bishop Herman Murray, the controversies that surrounded him were unlike anything he had faced before. Over the past several years, murmurs within the church community began to grow louder. evolving from hushed conversations in hallways to heated debates across social media platforms. Questions about leadership decisions, accountability, and personal choices started to surface, and suddenly, the man many had trusted implicitly was under intense scrutiny. It began quietly. Members of his congregation noticed changes, decisions that seemed abrupt, policies that were interpreted as rigid, and moments where his public persona didn't always align with what some expected from a spiritual leader of his stature. To outsiders, these may have appeared as minor issues, but in a community built on transparency, trust, and the moral authority of its leaders, even small cracks can quickly become glaring. Social media amplified every misstep. Videos of sermons, snippets of interviews, and even casual remarks were dissected, shared, and debated endlessly. Influencers, bloggers, and church critics joined the conversation, some framing Bishop Murray as a figure out of touch with modern realities, while others accused him of hypocrisy or secretive behavior. The narrative was no longer confined to the church walls. It had spilled into the wider public consciousness. What made the controversy even more intense were allegations regarding financial transparency and decision-making processes within his ministry. While no official charges were made, whispers of impropriety circulated. Church members questioned budget allocations, charitable distributions, and property acquisitions. Each rumor, whether substantiated or not, added layers of tension to a situation already fueled by public speculation. At the same time, personal attacks began surfacing. Some former members and associates claimed they had been sidelined or dismissed unfairly. Their accounts painted a picture of a leader whose methods, while effective in certain contexts, sometimes alienated those closest to him. These stories, combined with the rumors circulating online, created a perfect storm of scrutiny, one that few leaders could weather without losing composure. The pressure wasn't just external. Sources close to Bishop Murray revealed that, internally, he was wrestling with doubt, fatigue, and a sense of isolation. Long nights were spent reflecting on decisions, praying for guidance, and considering how best to respond to the growing storm. He knew that silence could be interpreted as guilt, but speaking without preparation could lead to further missteps. And that's exactly what led to the most critical turning point, the moment when Bishop Herman Murray realized he could no longer remain silent. It was a decision born not out of impulse, but out of necessity. The understanding that in a world where perception can outweigh reality, he needed to tell his side of the story before it was rewritten by rumor and conjecture. What he revealed in that first statement was unexpected, honest, and at times deeply emotional, a side of Bishop Murray that few had ever seen before. But before we get to his revelation, we need to understand the pivotal moments that forced him to face the storm head-on, including the incidents and challenges that built the tension leading to this unprecedented public response. Behind every public controversy lies a series of private battles, moments unseen by the outside world that test a leader's faith, resilience, and integrity. For Bishop Herman Murray, these moments were not a single event, but a series of escalating pressures that quietly but relentlessly built over months and years. It began with the persistent scrutiny from those closest to him. Trusted advisors, friends, and even family members began questioning his decisions. Conversations that once offered support now contained hints of doubt. Did he handle finances appropriately? Was he transparent enough in his dealings? Were some of the criticisms valid? These questions, though often asked in private, gnawed at him deeply. For a man whose life had been spent preaching integrity, accountability, and spiritual discipline, the weight of even a single accusation felt crushing. Then came the public element. Social media was unforgiving. Posts went viral overnight, some accusing him of negligence, others implying misconduct. Memes and short video clips spread faster than any official statement could counteract. Every comment section became a battlefield. Some loyal supporters defended him fiercely, while critics dissected every gesture, word, and sermon. The volume of judgment was overwhelming. No one could escape it. The pressure mounted further when former associates began speaking out publicly. These were people who had once worked alongside him, mentoring and collaborating on programs and church initiatives. Their stories, often framed as cautionary tales, gained traction online and created an image of division that undermined the unity he had worked so hard to maintain. In private, the bishop grappled with profound questions about his purpose. Was he leading effectively? Had he made missteps that could not be corrected? Was the criticism merely the price of leadership, or was it signaling a deeper problem he had failed to address? The answer was elusive. For a man whose identity had long been intertwined with the church and its community, these doubts cut deeply, leaving emotional scars that no sermon could heal. One particular incident became the tipping point. During a routine church meeting, a heated exchange occurred between long-standing members and a key advisor. Voices were raised, accusations were made, and by the end, it was clear that silence was no longer an option. The situation had escalated beyond private counsel and internal correction. It was now public, unavoidable, and demanding a response. This was compounded by an event outside the church. A media outlet ran a piece suggesting internal corruption, referencing unnamed sources and insinuating misconduct. While many of the claims were unverified, the damage to reputation was immediate. Friends, family, and congregants reached out with concern, asking the question he had been dreading. What are you going to do about this? It was in that crucible of pressure, scrutiny, and growing public speculation that Bishop Herman Murray realized that the only way forward was transparency. He had to break the silence, not to appease critics, not to win popularity, but to reclaim his narrative and speak truth, the kind of truth that was honest, unflinching, and deeply human. What he revealed in his statement did more than address the controversies. It exposed the emotional weight of leadership, the sacrifices made behind closed doors, and the personal cost of being a figure whose life is constantly under a microscope. His words were raw, unpolished, and filled with vulnerability, a side of him that few had ever seen and even fewer expected. But the revelations didn't stop at accountability. Bishop Murray went further, admitting moments of doubt, fear, and struggle that no sermon had prepared him to discuss publicly. He spoke about his own failures, times he felt he had fallen short, decisions he regretted, and lessons he learned the hard way. These admissions shocked many because they revealed that a man who had often been perceived as unshakable was, in fact, profoundly human. And in this vulnerability lay the turning point. Not only did it reshape the way his followers viewed him, but it also forced the wider faith community to confront the reality that leadership, regardless of position or influence, carries emotional and spiritual consequences that cannot be ignored. The story was far from over. What Bishop Murray revealed next, his reasoning, his reflections, and the plan for moving forward, would shock supporters and critics alike, leaving many to question everything they thought they knew about him. When Bishop Herman Murray finally stepped forward, the anticipation was unlike anything the faith community had experienced in years. The announcement wasn't made lightly. There was no grand fanfare, no viral teaser video, no promise of drama, only a quiet, solemn moment in which he chose to speak directly, honestly, and with a vulnerability that few had ever seen. The room was tense. Cameras were rolling. Congregants, supporters, and media representatives filled the space, their eyes fixed on the man whose silence had sparked months of speculation, rumors, and heated online debates. And then, with a deep breath, he began. "I have remained silent for too long," he said, his voice calm but deliberate. "I wanted to ensure that when I spoke, it would be with clarity, honesty, and purpose. I know that silence can sometimes speak louder than words, but it is time for truth to be heard. Right from the start, it was clear this was not a defensive statement. There were no excuses, no deflections, no attempts to shift blame. Instead, Bishop Murray addressed the controversies head-on, acknowledging the scrutiny he had faced. He spoke about the challenges of leadership, the pressures that come with being in the public eye, and the weight of responsibility that often goes unseen. I understand that some of my decisions have been questioned, he admitted. I understand that some of my actions may have caused pain or confusion, and for that, I am deeply sorry. Leadership is not just about vision. It is about humility, accountability, and the courage to confront one's own shortcomings. The honesty was striking. For a man who had often been seen as unshakable, his willingness to openly admit fallibility stunned both critics and supporters. He spoke about the internal battles he had fought, moments of doubt, fear, and the emotional toll of guiding a large ministry while under constant scrutiny. I have wrestled with decisions that were not easy, he continued. I have faced criticism, some of it fair, some of it unfair. I have questioned myself, my judgment, and even my path. But through it all, I have relied on faith, prayer, and the counsel of those I trust most. Then came the part that truly shocked the room. Bishop Murray addressed the specific allegations and whispers that had circulated online for months. Without naming names or fueling further controversy, he explained the context behind certain decisions that had been misinterpreted or exaggerated. He clarified financial matters, leadership actions, and internal policies, showing a side of transparency that few leaders are willing to display publicly. But perhaps the most profound moment of the statement came when he spoke about personal growth. He admitted mistakes, shared lessons learned, and revealed a determination to emerge stronger, wiser, and more grounded than ever. I am not perfect, he said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. I have faltered, I have erred, but every failure has been a lesson. Every criticism has been a call to examine myself more deeply. And today, I stand before you committed to integrity, transparency, and a renewed focus on the work I was called to do. It was a turning point. What could have been perceived as a defensive or scripted address instead became a testament to accountability, courage, and human vulnerability. Those in attendance were visibly moved. Some wiped tears from their eyes, others nodded in solemn agreement, and even some critics admitted quietly that the honesty was disarming. But the statement did more than just address past controversies. It set the stage for a future vision, one that promised reform, stronger accountability measures, and a renewed dedication to the community. Bishop Murray concluded with a message that was both inspiring and cautionary. Leadership carries immense responsibility, but integrity and transparency are non-negotiable for those who truly serve. The ripple effect was immediate. Social media buzzed with clips of his address, news outlets dissected his words, faith leaders weighed in. But amidst the commentary, one truth remained undeniable. Bishop Herman Murray had finally shown a side of himself the world rarely sees, and in doing so, he transformed a period of intense scrutiny into a moment of profound revelation. The moment Bishop Herman Murray's statement was released, the faith community and the broader public entered a state of shock and reflection. For weeks, rumors had swirled, stories had been speculated, and opinions had been divided. But hearing him speak openly, admitting mistakes, acknowledging the weight of leadership, and revealing vulnerabilities changed the conversation entirely. Within hours, social media platforms erupted. Clips of his statement were shared across Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Thousands of comments poured in, ranging from expressions of relief and support to skeptical critiques and pointed questions. Many followers admitted they had feared the worst, and yet, in listening to him, they discovered a humanity and honesty that few leaders dare to display. Faith leaders across denominations weighed in. Some praised his courage and humility, calling it a model of accountability for leaders in every sector. They highlighted his willingness to confront criticism and speak truth, even at the risk of judgment. Others remained cautious, acknowledging that while the statement was significant, actions in the coming months would speak louder than words. Among his closest supporters, the reaction was deeply emotional. Members of his congregation reported crying during live streams of the address, overwhelmed by the sincerity and rawness of his words. People who had followed him for years said they had never heard him speak so personally, so vulnerably, or so directly about his own fears and struggles. "I always saw him as a pillar of strength," one longtime congregant shared in an interview, "but hearing him admit his doubts and mistakes made me respect him even more. It reminded us all that even leaders are human, that even those we look up to wrestle with their own battles." At the same time, critics dissected every line. Some argued that the statement was strategic, designed to regain public favor and control the narrative. Others acknowledged that, regardless of motive, the candor was unprecedented and forced a reevaluation of what accountability could look like in a religious context. The broader community, beyond his immediate congregation, was also affected. Church members in other ministries, religious scholars, and observers of faith leadership began conversations about transparency, humility, and the emotional toll of being in the public eye. Bishop Murray's honesty sparked discussions on mental health, the pressure on religious leaders, and the need for systems of support that protect both leaders and their communities. Perhaps most striking was the personal impact on Bishop Murray himself. Sources close to him reported a visible sense of relief after the statement. Years of carrying internal pressure, emotional burdens, and the weight of expectation had been lifted, even if only partially. He reportedly spent the following days meeting privately with advisors, reflecting on his words, and considering how to follow up with meaningful actions that matched the sincerity of his address.